I only agreed to visit Pennhurst to prove something to myself, that fear is a choice, and I could choose not to feel it. The old asylum loomed like a cancer in the trees, the red bricks blistered with mold and neglect. I came with a small group of amateur urban explorers, all armed with cheap flashlights and too much bravado. But once inside, we drifted apart, each of us drawn to different wings of the building like insects to dying bulbs. I ended up in the hydrotherapy ward. The hallway leading there smelled like rust and bleach, like someone had tried to scrub the past away and failed. Faded signage still hung above the door. Cleansing brings clarity. The moment I stepped inside, the temperature dropped, cold enough to see my breath, but that wasn't what made me stop. It was the crying, soft, fragile, a little girl's voice, echoing from behind the rusted treatment doors. I stood frozen, hand hovering over the handle. Rational thought told me it couldn't be real, just wind, or the acoustics, or even an animal caught somewhere. But the sound wasn't random. It was rhythmic, filled with sobs and short gasps, like someone in real pain. I opened the door. The hydrotherapy room was bathed in bluish moonlight, leaking through a shattered skylight. In the center stood a single treatment tub, an old steel monstrosity bolted to the floor. Its enamel was chipped, stained brown in places, the old pipes still snaking along the walls like arteries. And the crying was louder now. I whispered, "Hello?" It stopped. I stepped closer, expecting to find a broken speaker, maybe a prank device left by previous explorers. But as I neared the tub, a sudden wave of heat hit my face. Not just warmth, blistering heat. I leaned over the edge and froze. The tub was filled with water, murky, steaming. Tiny bubbles swirled to the surface like something was boiling underneath. Then I saw her, submerged, just beneath the surface. Her face tilted toward me, lips parted in a soundless scream. Her skin was blistering, literally boiling, her flesh peeling in strips, her hair floating like dark seaweed around her. I stumbled back, nearly falling, but the water remained still. No splashes, no ripples, only steam curling into the air like fingers. I screamed for help, but no one answered. When I looked back at the tub, she was gone. The water was calm, cold, as if nothing had ever been there. But then the pipes above groaned to life. One by one, the rusted faucets along the walls began to drip, then pour, flooding the room with steaming water. I backed into a corner, heart hammering, watching as the tiles darkened, the puddles spreading toward my feet. And from the vents, I heard the voice again, whispering now. She wouldn't stop crying, so they made her clean. I turned to run, but the door had closed behind me, locked. I banged on it, screamed until my throat tore, but the water kept rising. The heat was unbearable. My shoes squelched on the soaked floor. My skin burned where steam touched it. I pressed my ear to the door and heard scratching. From the other side, fingernails dragging along the steel. Then, a knock, 3 times. Soft, measured, child-sized. And a voice, breathy and wet, whispering, "Your turn." The faucets exploded. Scalding water shot across the room. I ducked, slipped, felt my arm sear where it was hit. The crying returned. Dozens of voices now, sobbing and shrieking in unison. And through it all, I heard one sound rise above the rest. Laughter, childlike, giddy. I don't remember escaping. One moment I was pounding at the door, and the next I was outside on the grass, retching and crying, my arms covered in burns that the hospital couldn't explain. They said I fell, that my mind filled in the blanks, that my injuries came from rusted pipes or hot air trapped in old vents. But some nights, in my bathroom mirror, I see steam curl across the glass, even when the water is cold. And in the fog, just for a second, I swear I see her face, still screaming, still boiling. They told me not to go into the tunnels beneath Pennhurst. Former orderlies, security guards, Even other urban explorers all warned me the same way. Don't go down there. I thought it was just another scare tactic, like telling someone not to say Bloody Mary in the mirror. But the moment I pushed past the rusted steel door, I realized they hadn't told me everything. The air was wrong. It clung to my skin, heavy and damp, like the whole place had been sweating for decades. And underneath it, something else. A smell so foul it felt alive, curling into my sinuses and coating my tongue. Meat left out for weeks, stagnant water, sweet metallic blood. All of it layered, baked into the air, like the walls themselves were rotting. The stench just seeped through, warm and sticky, settling into my lungs. The tunnels went on forever. Cinder block walls, rusted light fixtures dangling from the ceiling like snapped bones. My boots echoed too loudly, making me painfully aware of how far I was from the surface. Every step forward, the smell thickened, becoming almost a taste. That's when I heard it. At first, I thought it was water dripping somewhere ahead, soft, irregular. But the longer I listened, the more I realized it was wet, organic, chewing. A slow, deliberate tearing followed by a sound like someone sucking the last meat off a bone. I froze mid-step. It came from the room at the end of the hall, an old supply room, its metal door hanging crooked on one hinge. The darkness inside was thicker than the tunnels, swallowing the pale cone of my flashlight. And then, a shadow moved. Something was crouched, low to the ground, its back to me, its spine arched grotesquely, every vertebra sharp understretched, almost translucent skin. Its hands were wrong, too thin, the fingers too long, each ending in something jagged that caught the faint light. They were buried deep in something black and glistening, something that shifted and twitched like it didn't realize it was dead yet. The chewing stopped. Slowly, it sniffed the air, long, deliberate breaths. My flashlight beam trembled in my hands, and then it turned its head. Its mouth was stretched too wide, the jaw dislocated, teeth thin and splintered like broken glass. What was left of whatever it was eating still hung there, dripping onto the floor in wet slaps. I stepped back, but the sound that came next froze me where I stood. It laughed. Not loud, not human, just a low, ragged hiss of amusement, as if it knew exactly how terrified I was. Then it moved. Fast. Too fast. I didn't wait to see it close the distance. I ran, the smell following me like it was alive, chasing me up the tunnel until my chest felt like it would split open. I didn't stop until I burst through the door and into the cold night air. It's been 3 days. My clothes are gone, but the stench is still in my hair, my skin, and last night, just before I fell asleep, I heard the sound of chewing again, right outside my bedroom door. I didn't believe the stories. Not really. I volunteered at Pennhurst out of curiosity, not bravery. The place had been shut for decades, rotting into the woods like a wound left to fester. The restoration team was cataloging artifacts for the museum exhibit, and I was assigned the East Wing, once used for occupational therapy. It was the smell that hit me first. Not rot, not mildew. It was sweet, like old candy left out in the sun too long. The therapy room was tucked behind a collapsed hallway. I found it on the blueprint, but had to squeeze through broken drywall and collapsed tiles to get in. The moment I stepped inside, the air changed, stagnant, syrupy, still. The room was filled with dolls. Dozens of them sat in cracked chairs, perched on rotting shelves. Some posed around a small table set with plastic teacups. Their faces were porcelain, but cracked with age, faded paint clinging like old bruises. Some had missing limbs. Others had clothes stitched onto their bodies with rough, rusted thread. But what stopped me, what paralyzed me, was their mouths. They had teeth, real ones, yellowed and irregular, too large for the dolls' faces. Some were baby teeth, Others were jagged adult molars. One doll, in a wheelchair, had what looked like a full set, meticulously embedded into its porcelain jaw. I backed away, bile rising in my throat. My flashlight flickered, just once, but when it came back on, one of the dolls had shifted. It was facing me. Its mouth was slightly open, teeth glinting in the dim beam. I stared at it, frozen. The air felt too thick to breathe. Then I heard something behind me, a tiny scuffling sound, like fingernails tapping tile. I turned around, shining my light. Nothing. When I looked back, 2 more dolls had turned toward me. I was sure of it. Their heads had shifted, their bodies angled slightly forward as if they were listening. I forced myself to move, stepping carefully past a toppled table. I needed a photo, proof. I pulled out my phone, trying to steady my shaking hands. But every time I lifted it, the camera refused to focus on their faces. It blurred, glitched, warped the dolls, like they weren't fully there. Then, from deeper in the room, I heard giggling. Soft, childlike, wrong. I stepped backward. My light passed over a far wall and froze on something that made my skin crawl. A mirror, but the reflection wasn't mine. It showed the room, yes, but filled with children. Dozens of them. Pale, hair matted, eyes wide with sorrow. They were sitting where the dolls sat, holding teacups, facing me. One of them, a little girl in a tattered yellow dress, slowly lifted her hand and pointed at me through the glass. The mirror cracked, not all at once, just a thin fracture down the center. I ran. I didn't even try to be quiet, just pushed past the chairs and broken toys, scraping my arms on splintered wood. The laughter followed me, high-pitched, gleeful. By the time I reached the hallway, something was tugging at my back. I thought I was caught on debris, but no. When I looked down, a doll's hand was clutching the strap of my backpack. Its porcelain fingers dug into the fabric. I screamed and tore it off, flinging the whole thing behind me. It clattered against the wall and went still. I didn't stop running until I was outside. The team dismissed it, said I hallucinated, that the teeth were animal, that the mirror was old, warped, that stress can play tricks on the mind. But I've seen things since, at night, reflections in windows that aren't mine. And once, just once, I found something outside my apartment door. A doll, old, faded, with baby teeth in its mouth. And a note, in a child's scrawl, tucked inside its cracked dress. You forgot your tea party. Every haunting has a witness. You've just become one. Subscribe and never be alone again.